Hi, everyone. I want to start off by saying thank you to everybody who's been sending me the well wishes and praying for Heidi and I as we're heading down to Washington, D.C. next week. We're very excited about going. A couple of years ago, I began a conversation with a congressman, Congressman Smith from New Jersey, the 4th District, about prison reform, um, inmate development, and those sorts of things. And here we are. We're gonna go. We're gonna go down there. I had submitted this proposal. This is my ideas and perspectives, opinions, however, about inmate development and reform, and what I think should be happening in addition to some of the good things that Donald Trump laid out in the First Step Act, which I'm also going down to comment about that. But also, I'm going to be meeting with Congressman Smith and another congressman, one congressman about the inmate development and reform, and Congressman Smith about human rights violations that are taking place in prisons throughout America. So, there's probably a perspective out there that inmates deserve what they get, but the fact of the matter is the Constitution says that everyone is entitled to the same protections, whether you're in prison or you're out of prison. And just remember that not every inmate who's serving time in prison is there because they injured somebody. If you were watching the State of the Union yesterday, you saw a woman who had been given natural life in prison because she was involved in selling drugs 20 something years ago. And after 20 something years, Donald Trump has allowed her to leave. And there's many more inmates like her, perhaps not serving natural life, but serving a lot of years who don't deserve to experience some of the more violent aspects of spending time in prison. They are entitled to being protected in the same way you and I are entitled to being protected. So those are the two reasons I'm going down there. But why do I have this passion or compassion for men and women, in prison? Why is it my desire to be a voice for the millions of people sitting in prison right now? And I'll tell you, in 1982, I was arrested in Newark, New Jersey. I was indicted on 6 counts. Those 6 charges totaled 60 years in prison, and after a long trial, uh, I was acquitted on 3 of the charges, ultimately sentenced to 7 years in prison, and I spent 3 years in serving custodial time. Now, I can remember, I can remember the day that I was convicted. We had just gone through a 2 week trial, and I was out in the hallways of the courtroom waiting for the jury to, kind of make their decision. And when I saw that red light go on in the jury room, I didn't go running for the comfort of God, right? I didn't go run and pray. I ran into the bathroom and I began snorting as much cocaine as I could possibly snort. And then I went into the courtroom and I took a seat up front where I was surrounded by 4 officers. And they said, "Will the defendant please rise?" And as the jury was declaring the words guilty over my life, and I was looking down at the table in front of me, I could see white flakes of cocaine falling from my nose onto that table. And why do I tell you all this? Well, I tell you this to tell you that, there's this perspective that inmates are in prison because of being poverty stricken or uneducated or they don't have a trade skill. And I'm here to tell you that I went to prison and I had an education, I had a trade skill. I went to prison because I was a broken man. And I'm here to tell you that everybody in prison, men, women alike, are broken, whether it's physically, emotionally, spiritually, professionally, socially, in every way. The human beings filling our prisons throughout America are broken. And that's who I was. That's the kind of behavior, right? The snorting the coke and all that before getting convicted. That's the kind of behavior broken people participate in. Okay? And then I went into prison. And some of my initial experiences, some of my, what would you call that? my introduction to prison was seeing men lit on fire or seeing men sodomized and screaming as they're being raped and cops doing nothing. Those are the kinds of things that I experienced. And I know for a fact those same exact things are still going on today. And those images and those memories are burned into my mind that I will never forget some of the things that I've seen and experienced in prison. And so through that, over time and building a relationship with God, God's put it on my heart. This passion and compassion for inmates and to be a voice to go speak for them on their behalf. Because the fact of the matter is 80% of America's inmates are nonviolent. They didn't hurt anybody. They didn't kill anybody. They didn't rape anybody. They made bad choices. They made mistakes because they're broken, because they're not equipped to live life responsibly, whatever it might be. But certainly they don't deserve to be sodomized and raped and lit on fire, beaten and tortured in prison. That's a fact. The consequence for living life irresponsibly, and let me say, I deserve to be in prison. Everything I got, to the degree that I went to trial and was convicted of a crime and I went to prison, I deserved that. I deserved to be in prison. I deserved to lose my freedom because I lived my life irresponsibly. And that just happens to be the consequences. But all that other stuff that kind of goes with it, you know, that's not supposed to be part of the consequence. And so, on the one hand, I'm going to speak to those kinds of things in terms of human rights and human right violations. The 13th Amendment that tells all Americans that slavery has been abolished, and it has, but it has that little exception clause in there that says, with the exception of those duly convicted of a crime. So I want to speak to Congressman Smith about how, you know, I view that exception in the 13th Amendment and its impact in terms of human rights and how that relates to inmates serving time in prison. Particularly, you know, they have a universal declaration of human rights, and Article 5 kind of speaks to that, about punishment and how actually it says no one shall be subjected to torture or cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment as punishment. So those things I'm going to speak to him about. But also it bothers me that in prison, when I was there, and certainly in many prisons today, there's no restorative component. It's all about punishment. And so if reform is the goal, then I think I have some pretty common sense ways to achieve reform and success. And over the next few days, I'm not gonna do it all in one video, because who wants to sit listening to me for an hour, right? But I am gonna share with you some of my common sense ideas as the days go by leading up to our trip to DC. And I'd love to hear back from you. I'd love to hear your thoughts, you know, about, you know, what I'm about to do, embark on, Heidi and I, and what your thoughts might be, or any comments you might have regarding my remedy to bring about reform and reduce recidivism in America. Well, thank you again for all your prayers. Thank you for all your warm wishes and your excitement for Heidi and I. And I look forward to speaking to you in the upcoming days about my inmate development and reform proposal. So God bless you, and good night.